All you need is a cup or mug or glass, a tankard, chalice or stein, a canteen, jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. Join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens now. Go. Yeah, that's good. That's the good stuff. Now the brain is firing on all cylinders. Let's look at the news through the lens of incentives, human nature, and the two movies playing on one screen. Because these stories aren't random. They're symptoms of systems that reward the wrong things or fail to filter out the obvious problems. Start with a Texas massage therapist, Dasha Kilpatrick, 25, working at Massage Forest in Conroe. She's in an H-E-B grocery store, gets into a verbal clash with two Muslim women. The video captures her saying things like, "You're not welcome here. This is not a Muslim country. This is a Christian country," and calling Islam a terrorist organization. No fist thrown, just words in a public aisle. The video goes viral. Her employer fires her. Then the internet does what the internet does. A Give, Send, Go campaign launches, framing it as cultural pushback, and it raises over $153,000 from thousands of donors in days. Nancy Mace and others on one side call it free speech courage. CARE and the usual suspects call it bigotry. Here's what the simulation is showing us. One movie plays the story as a brave woman expressing frustration with rapid demographic change and incompatible cultural imports. The other movie sees pure hate speech and demands cancellation. Both movies have some truth because reality is messy. The woman lost her job because corporations are terrified of the mob. The mob on the other side raised her more money than she probably made in a year because there's a market for pushback against what feels like invasion by invitation. Incentives matter. Fire someone for words in a grocery store, and you create a martyr who gets funded by people tired of walking on eggshells. Keep importing groups with dramatically different views on women's rights, free speech, and integration, and you get friction in the aisles. The system isn't filtering for cultural compatibility anymore. It's optimizing for something else: cheap labor, virtue signaling, or just momentum. The fundraiser success tells you the silent majority isn't that silent when the button gets pushed. SIP. Next up, Ottawa. Police Chief Eric Stubbs drops a video message telling his officers to knock it off with the database abuse for dating. Officers running license plates on women they spot at the gym or coffee shop. Messaging vulnerable victims they met on calls. Sexually themed comments to female colleagues. It's not one bad apple. It's a pattern bad enough that the chief is going public and pushing for more women in the force to change the culture. They've already demoted people for dozens of unauthorized searches. This one is pure incentive failure inside an institution that holds power over the rest of us. Police databases exist to solve crimes and protect the public. When the tools get repurposed for personal romantic conquests, especially targeting women who are already in vulnerable positions, the trust erodes fast. The chief is right to call it out. But the fact that it reached this level tells you the internal culture had weak guardrails. Human nature doesn't change because you put on a uniform. Give people access to private information and low chance of getting caught, and some percentage will use it for the obvious thing, trying to get laid or exert power. The fix isn't just more training slides. It's better accountability, real consequences, and maybe rethinking how much personal data sits in systems that humans operate. Two movies again. One side sees toxic masculinity in blue. The other sees predictable male behavior in any high-power job when oversight slips. The chief is trying to drag the force toward the latter understanding before the public does it for them. SIP. Costa Rica detains a Palestinian man suspected of Hamas ties. They designated Hamas a terrorist organization back in April, and now intelligence picked this guy up in Desamparados. He's in maximum security pending deportation. Small country, decisive action. Compare that to bigger nations with bigger problems. Costa Rica is doing basic vetting and acting on it. The man entered without immediate red flags, but got flagged later through monitoring. This is what functional immigration and security looks like. You designate the bad actors, you watch the borders and the networks, and you remove threats. The contrast with places that struggle to even acknowledge patterns or act on them is stark. Incentives here are aligned with national self-preservation. In other systems, the incentives got captured by open border ideology, refugee optics, or fear of being called names. Result? Higher friction, higher risk. Costa Rica shows you don't need to be a superpower to protect your population. You just need to want to. The story is small in engagement numbers, but big in what it reveals. Some countries still treat terrorism sponsorship as disqualifying. Others treat it as a paperwork issue or a diversity strength. SIP. The Illinois teacher story hits harder. Giovanna Mercedes Moreno Ochipinti, 32, Venezuelan with Italian citizenship too, entered legally in 2021 on visa waiver, overstayed. Worked as a teacher in the Elgin area. Allegedly drove 2 suspected Tren de Aragua gang members to a Gage Park house party shooting in December 2024. 3 people killed, others wounded. She helped them get away. Chicago police picked her up days later with weapons in her car, but released her. Sanctuary policies meant no ICE notification. ICE finally grabbed her in May 2026. She's in custody, awaiting deportation. The gang guys got deported too. This is the cost of broken filters at multiple levels. Immigration system lets someone overstay and then work with kids. School system apparently didn't catch anything alarming in background or behavior. Local law enforcement in a sanctuary jurisdiction prioritizes non-cooperation over public safety. The woman allegedly facilitated a gang shooting and still got to walk around teaching until federal authorities stepped in months later. Incentives were all wrong. Sanctuary policies signal to illegal immigrants and their associates that local cops won't hand them over. Result? Higher crime spillover, especially from groups like Tren de Aragua that have been making headlines for violence. The 2 movies here are brutal. One movie sees enforcement as cruel and racist. The other sees predictable consequences when you import people from high-crime regions without proper screening and then tie the hands of police. The fact that a teacher was involved adds the extra layer. Trust in institutions that touch children got gamed. When the system fails this obviously, the public notices. And the fundraiser energy from the first story shows what happens when enough people notice the same pattern across stories. SIP. Last one. Flexport CEO Ryan Peterson calls remote work white-collar fraud, especially when you have young kids at home. He says the idea that he could get real work done with a 3-year-old and 5-year-old running around is delusional. Company went back to 5 days in office. Parents are pushing back, saying flexible hours and home setups work for them. This is the clearest example of incentive misalignment between management and workers. Peterson is speaking from lived experience. Distractions are real, culture suffers without in-person interaction, mentoring and spontaneous collaboration don't happen over Zoom the same way. The pandemic remote experiment had some upsides for certain roles and certain people, but it also revealed that a lot of work was theater or low-focus output when no one was watching. The pushback from parents is understandable. Childcare costs are insane, commutes suck, and some jobs really are output-based rather than butt in seat. But the CEO is pointing at something deeper. White-collar work has a lot of slack that remote work exposes and sometimes amplifies. When your 3-year-old needs attention, the laptop stays open, but the brain isn't fully on the spreadsheet. Incentives for the company are productivity and culture. Incentives for the employee are convenience and work-life balance. When those diverge too far, you get quiet quitting, lower innovation, or just slower everything. The honest take is that remote works great for some tasks and some life stages, and terribly for others. Pretending it's universally superior or universally fraudulent is the real fraud. Companies that figure out the hybrid sweet spot will win. The rest will keep fighting the same war. Now connect the dots while the coffee is still hot. These stories all trace back to filters and incentives that got miscalibrated. Immigration without cultural or criminal screening creates friction in grocery stores and shootings in Chicago. Institutions that don't police their own power create database stalkers in uniform. Schools and cities that prioritize ideology over safety let questionable people into classrooms and then shield them. Work culture that pretends location doesn't matter runs into the brick wall of human attention and parenting reality. The fundraiser in Texas shows the market-correcting corporate cowardice in real time. Costa Rica shows a small player still capable of basic self-defense. The common thread is that reality eventually reasserts itself. Bad incentives produce bad outcomes. People notice patterns even when media tries to isolate each story. The simulation keeps serving up these examples because the underlying design flaws haven't been fixed. Another sip. The dopamine is flowing. The world looks exactly as crazy as it is, but at least we can see it clearly with coffee in hand. The patterns are obvious if you stop pretending every clash is an isolated incident and every policy failure is someone else's fault. Systems that reward denial over competence eventually deliver the bill. The question isn't whether more of these stories will appear. The question is whether the incentives get realigned before the next round hits harder. What do you see in these stories? The simultaneous sip already happened, but the conversation is just getting started. Look closer and you see the real pattern: erosion of trust. Every one of these incidents chips away at the average person's confidence that the systems around them, work, police, schools, borders, are competent and fair. When a massage therapist gets fired for grocery store words while actual threats skate through immigration filters, people stop believing the rules apply equally. That $153,000 fundraiser isn't just charity. It's a signal of accumulated resentment looking for an outlet. Humans are wired for reciprocity. Break that long enough and you get parallel economies of support, alternative media, and private solutions because the public ones feel captured. The remote work debate fits right into this trust erosion too. Employees sense management doesn't fully trust them at home, while executives see declining output and wonder if the whole white-collar class has been gaming the system. Parents push back because their incentives, surviving modern family economics, clash with corporate reality. The simulation is forcing a correction. Either companies accept lower productivity as the price of talent retention, or workers accept that presence still matters for high-value roles. No amount of performative flexibility videos changes human attention limits. We're not built for seamless multitasking between toddlers and spreadsheets. Finally, the international contrast with Costa Rica's quick action stands out like a flare. Small nations without the luxury of denial can't afford imported chaos. They act. Bigger ones debate root causes until the body count rises. This isn't left or right. It's competence versus captured incentives. The teacher gang story proves how deep the capture goes. Local policies shielding federal violations, schools hiring without scrutiny, ICE playing cleanup months late. Until voters and leaders realign incentives toward basic filtering and accountability, these stories will keep coming. The coffee's almost gone, but the clarity remains. Fix the filters or watch the friction compound. Your move, simulation.